Okay, so I'm going to look at slide 4 on your homework, and we're going to move on from there. This should be the last last 5 problems of your 4 or 5 problems of your homework. So we're looking at this one. A girl is delivering newspapers, travels 4 blocks west, 8 blocks north, then 7 blocks east. What is the magnitude, that's why I underlined magnitude, of her resultant vector? So we got to find the magnitude first, and then we'll find the direction as part of part 2 of 3. The last one will ask us for the distance, and we'll get to that in a second. Alright, so first thing I want to do is I want to minimize this guy over here, so we can go ahead and start writing that out. Next I'm going to select my ink, and I want to do a little coordinate plane. This is my north, this is my east, this is my south, this is my west. We go 4 blocks to the west, then we go 8 blocks to the north, then we go 7 blocks to the east. You will note that this is 4, this is 7, this is 8. There's going to give me a nice resulting vector. If I start right here on the origin and I go this route, that's a resulting vector. I want to solve for the magnitude of that vector. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to redraw this out, and I want to draw first to identify my horizontal component. So I'm going to do 7 minus 4 will give me 3 in the east direction from the origin. So 1, we'll do 1, 2, 3, and then I'll have to go ahead and continue this guy up. And in the north it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so that means that I'll be right up over here at 8 and 3. The resultant vector there is there. Now I have a horizontal component here and a vertical component. I don't know if you noticed that, and my lines are not very good there. So we have these two components. This is going to be considered the x, this is going to be considered the y. We typically put a delta or a triangle in front of those things. The delta x will be equal to 3 units, and the delta y would be equal to 8 units, because that's how far I went north. Okay, now we are going to use Pythagorean theorem to solve for c here, the distance of that vector. So to do that, we're going to do x squared plus y squared is equal to c squared. You may remember it as a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, but I want to use the labels that I have here on the graph, because we're going to do something with them in a little bit again to find the direction. So in this case, I'll have 3 squared plus 8 squared is equal to c squared. Okay, so I minimized this, or made it smaller a little bit so I have plenty of room. So now if I go ahead and solve that out, 3 squared plus 8 squared is going to be 9 plus 64. So that would be 73 is equal to c squared. To find the answer to this, we'll do the square root of these guys, and that should give us our answer. Okay, as I went and plugged that into the calculator, I got 8.54 blocks. You do not have to put the unit in for your answer, so all you'd have to do is enter in whatever value or magnitude you get. So now we need to find the direction. So I'm going to kind of give me some more space, and we'll go from there. Alright, let's focus in on the problem real quick. It does say that find the direction and as measured from due east, with counterclockwise being positive. So that's what we're going to use that, and we want to have the degree symbol as our unit. So we want to make sure that our calculator is in degrees. So let me minimize this, and we can go ahead and start work on our math there. Alright, So now we're going to use a trigonometric function that we're going to use the rest of the year called tan theta is equal to the delta y, or the y component, the vertical component, divided by the horizontal component. Okay, we'll be using this throughout the year, so please make sure you know this tangent function. Just a little side note, the circle with the line through it is angle, and that's what we're going to use. We want to know the angle of this vector from the horizon, so we're going to be solving for this angle right here. So that's where we're going to go in and solve for theta. Notice due east is here, so if I would put east here, we want to know from that, what's the angle from that. That's why we're solving for this angle inside. That's why y is on top and x is on bottom. For my problem, we should have tangent is equal, tangent of theta is equal to 8 divided by 3. Alright, now to get rid of tangent, we're going to have to multiply by 1 over tangent. 1 over tangent in your calculator is, it's hard to do, so what you're actually going to need to do is you're actually going to need to use something called inverse tangent. Okay, so the inverse tangent will actually look like this in your calculator. If you hit the second tangent option, most calculators will have this be the second tangent option, which is inverse tangent. We're going to actually multiply this guy on either side. That'll get rid of our tangent theta, our tangent on the theta side, so we'll get theta is equal to inverse tangent of 8 divided by 3. I'm going to do that math real quick and come right back. Alright, so when I plug this into the calculator, this right here into the calculator, I get 69.44 degree. Alright, we're going to move on to the next problem. Alright, so on the part 3, which is what we're looking at right here, part 3, we are actually, if I make a note, from on mine, I went 4 blocks west, 8 blocks north, and 7 blocks east. I'm going to add up the values, and the direction does not matter. It wants to know the distance. So 4 plus 8 plus 7, in my case that is 19 blocks would be my answer. I do not have to write the word blocks in. I would just write 19 in the box and type it in. That would be the answer to the total distance I traveled. Alright, moving on to slide number 5. We will note here that we just want a magnitude. We are not looking for a direction on this one, just magnitude is what we'll be looking at. We have 2 parallel vectors, perpendicular vectors, and we want to know what is the resulting vector. Okay, so say you have one that goes up and one that goes this way, and so the resulting vector is this guy right here. This is C. This will be your change. This will be your A of one and B of the other. So we're going to have to do A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. So give me just a second and we'll do the math. Alright, plugging in the information here, I'm going to be using A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. I have vectors of 28.6 north. This is actually a pair of vectors, so it looks like it's, newtons is what it is, newtons. That's a unit, it's not a direction. We're going to square it, and we're going to add in the same 228.6 newtons. Okay, and that's going to give me C squared. Once you square those and add those together, you have to take the square root. So it'll be the square root of is equal to C. Let me do the math real quick. Alright, so when I square 228.6, I get 52,256.96. I add those together and take the square root, and I get 323.3 newtons. You do not have to enter in the newton, you can just enter in the value, and that should be your answer. Now when I look at this, I go back and look at my triangle. I know that both sides are 228, so that means that it's got to be a little bit more than 228, and 323.3 matches my answer. All right, I'm going to move on to the last set of problems, last slide, and we'll go from there. Okay, so looking at this last problem, it's really straightforward. It's the same as the previous one. We're to separate our units in kilometers instead of newtons. We have two vectors at right angles, and we're going to use Pythagorean theorem. Again, in this case, it says one is moving due east at 260 kilometers, so you got due east at 260 kilometers, and another one is moving due, and then it takes a right angle and moves due north at 400. It wants to know what was the resulting vector. So this is 260 kilometers, this is 400 kilometers, and we're going to use Pythagorean theorem to solve for the magnitude, and that's what it wants, magnitude of the displacement. Okay, so let's get started. Alright, so we're going to start with Pythagorean theorem. B squared is equal to C squared. So we're actually going to see that be the displacement in the x and the displacement in the y gives us a resultant vector. So when we plug these in, you're going to get 260 kilometers. You're going to square that and add that to 400 kilometers squared. That will give you your C squared. Okay, so go ahead and do the math real quick on that. You should get the square root of 260 squared plus 400 squared will give you your C, or the resultant magnitude of the displacement. Okay, I went ahead and filled out the math for us real quick. 260 squared is 67,600, and 400 squared is 160,000. You add those two together, you get 227,600. You take the square root of that, and it gives you 477.1. Real quick, I go back and look. That number is a little bit more than my longest side of my triangle, so that should work, and that would be my answer. As always, if you have questions, don't hesitate to email me. Hopefully that helped everybody. Thank you.